Hey, welcome back to STRonomics. I'm Bill Faith, joined by Kenny, the data nerd, the data scientist, Bedwell. How are you today, Kenny?
Doing great. Doing great. How are you doing today, William?
I am awesome. Really awesome. I'm going to be even better tomorrow afternoon, but heading there tomorrow morning.
Nice.
So I'm kind of excited. But you know what I'm really not excited about are all these stupid motherfuckers that are taking out HELOCs
Jeez.
on their properties. Dude, it scares the shit out of me, Kenny. And you just brought this up, and you're right. And I haven't seen a whole lot. I guess maybe I have more advanced investors that follow me than you do. No, I don't know. I'm just kidding. But it's scary that people are taking out 8.5% HELOCs on $200,000 on their primary residence. And it's really not even any different on, if they're doing it on an investment property, in my opinion. But it is a little bit different on a primary residence. I think we should all protect that, especially if you have a young family. You have a young family. I have kids that are in high school and stuff. And I'm pretty conservative. I think people think I'm probably super aggressive, but I could never imagine anything happening to my home. You know what I mean? So I protect that at all cost. I think one of the big things is people, and I want your opinion on this, Kenny, they don't factor in the cost of the HELOC money. I've got a client, you know who he is. He's in our mastermind, and he's got $600K on a HELOC right now. And it started at 3% because he used it to buy his first STR, and he used it to buy his second STR, and then he used it to rehab the second STR, and then he used it to, improve the first STR. And now he's got two STRs, probably just under 2 million, 1.819 total purchase price, combined doing about under 400,000, probably $350,000 to $380,000 in revenue this year, and $600,000 on a HELOC that started at probably 4%, maybe 3.5%, and it's now 8.25%.
Yeah,
it's $4,000. I think it's $4,600 a month. That's a whole nother investment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. I had a call with a couple.
I'm gonna pull my hair out, Kenny. It's short. I can't grab it, but it scares me.
And the way people are running their numbers, like it's not there. Some of them aren't even taking into account the payment back to the HELOC in their pro forma. So I was speaking to this couple, and they sent me a turnkey property in California, and like they were like, "What do you think?" And their revenue number is way too high. Then they were looking at their interest rate was low. And they're just like all these like red flags. I was like, that's wrong, that's wrong. And then they didn't take into account the actual payment back. And then we ran that again, even with the payment back in. I mean, it was like
their down payment cash was going to be HELOC.
Yes. So the down payment was the HELOC on the property, the investment property. And it was strictly a cash flow play, meaning that there's no appreciation in the asset. They're saying, look, this property has the cash flow enough to pay for itself and then pay for the HELOC back. And I was like, you're going to be paying they were negative to begin with, but even then, if we said, okay, well, cool, if you could make enough, you'd be paying your HELOC back. I did all the math. It was like, take them 10 years based off that cash flow.
And that's typically what the balloon is 10 years. And people don't even understand that there's a 10-year balloon on most HELOCs.
Right.
Some of them have 5 years right now, Kenny.
Yeah. So I was like, this isn't, stop. Like, and here's the thing, like, I know this is a little bit, I personally wouldn't do it just based on my situation. I don't want to tell somebody else, like, you shouldn't HELOC your primary residence.
Fuck that. No, you shouldn't. No. It doesn't work. I'm sorry for the bad language, but I get passionate about this.
I feel very strongly about it.
The problem is if you don't have enough fucking money, don't buy the property. It's that simple. You're not even factoring in carry costs behind that. You should not take out a $200,000 HELOC at 8.5% when you have $100,000 in total life savings. It's stupid. You're putting your future at risk by doing that.
it is very, very, very risky. And that's
Come on. It's stupid. It's negligent. It's more than risky right now.
That's fair. That's fair.
I'm
I don't know.
going to be very hypocritical here for a second. I'm taking out a HELOC to build a pool, a non-cash flow generating investment of $180,000. I'm taking out a $200,000 HELOC on my primary residence. Is that risky?
Yes.
No, it's not.
No. Well, there is risk involved.
It's not, because
there is risk involved. But yes, go ahead.
I have the cash behind to pay cash.
Sure.
My cash, I'm making between 15 to 18% across all of my investments on my cash. So if I'm doing 15%, I have a 7% delta on what I'm going to pay for that HELOC interest to the positive. So I'm making an additional 7% above that when I reinvest that cash. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So I have the carry costs behind my money. If I only had $50,000 or $100,000 or even $300,000 in cash, I would not put in the pool. I wouldn't take it out to make an investment either. It's what's behind it is the problem. Don't you agree?
Sure. Yeah.
It also has to do with your age. Kenny said he wouldn't in his situation. He's got a newborn. He's got another child that's young. He's much younger than I am. He's in a different financial position. He's in a different career path situation. Everything's different. These are all things that we have to take into account. The one thing I would tell Kenny is you have more time to take risks and make mistakes. And you know this, you're a smart adult, than I do. I can't afford to make those mistakes. I just got off the phone, Kenny, with a couple in Canada that's 57 years old. They wanted to join my mastermind, $15,000 to join the mastermind. They have $76,000 in life savings. I think they had $100,000 in retirement, and they said $75,000 in investable income. I said, you don't have any investable income.
Yeah.
They're 57. They lost their business in COVID, right? A lot of this, I get emotional about this stuff because I hate to see people screw up their lives by taking too big of risks.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. I've taken risks, but I bet on myself, which I know is a sure thing at this point, or I don't bet on it. And for a lot of you, especially if you're looking at doing your first investment, it's the biggest investment you're ever going to make. I never put as much money down buying a personal residence, Kenny, as I did on my short-term rentals. I never invested as much money starting my two $30 million plus businesses as I did buying short-term rentals. It's a huge deal.
I think too, like thinking about it, the way I like to think about the risk side is like, if it hit the fan, if shiz hit the fan, how would that
If what hit the fan?
Shiz. We'll say shiz.
This is now an unfair.
I know you started out like you stupid.
If the poop emoji hits the fan.
There we go. Yeah. We'll keep it G now. Rated PG. So, but seriously,
don't worry, I'll have them bleep that out at the beginning.
There we go. If it hits the fan, I mean, what's the impact to your personal life, like your home, your family's, like what's that going to be, And so that every time I go to make an investment, I'm keeping that in mind. So like if this investment for whatever reason doesn't work out, and I have, how am I going to pay for those expenses? Like if it never cash flowed and I literally had to pay whatever the bill was out of pocket, how am I doing that? Have I hedged my bets in other places in order to prop that up where I don't risk anything on the personal side?
I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to stop you real quick. When was your newborn born? I think it was in April, right?
April 1st.
April 1st. A week after the STR Wealth Conference. That was tight.
Very tight.
So if I go back April 1st, so March, February, January, December, November, October, or no, yeah, September, August. Wow. So that happened at the mastermind meeting in Miami, is what I'm saying.
Maybe.
But imagine if that was 3 months earlier. Well, 6 months earlier. You left your job at Citi
Yeah.
in like March, right, of 2022. Do you think today in retrospect that you would have left your job, the cush, Fortune 500 job with benefits, high salary, all that type of stuff, if you would have known that you had another one on the way to start STR Insights?
Um,
I guess really to reframe that, how much deeper consideration would you have taken?
yeah. Well, let's get a little personal here, if that's okay with everybody. I
Are you
get
avoiding the answer to my question?
I will answer your question, but I want to get a little more personal here because so my wife and I we were pregnant during this time. We did have a miscarriage. And so while I was still like working at Citi. And so and I knew that I needed to quit, to start STR Insights. And I did have to make that decision. And I did decide I need to leave STR Insights. I wanted to wait a little longer, to get through something, build up a
You mean
little
to
more.
leave Citi for STR, to start STR?
Correct. Yeah. Correct. So instead of, leave in March, wait till like maybe June or July, and do that. And I also consider just staying on, because I got 2 month paternity leave. I'd take that and then just peace out. But my boss would have been upset about that one. But, there were a lot of benefits, and I did
That show. I don't mean to interrupt your story, but that shows you the integrity of Kenny Bedwell, because 99% of employees would have taken the paternity leave and then just quit.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, I appreciate that. But so I mean, I did kind of make that decision when we were pregnant, with the unfortunately with the baby we lost. We don't really like talk much about it, and it's not that big of a deal. But it was something that, we talked about in detail of, okay, like if I'm going to quit and we're going to have this child, how are we going to pay for things? How is that going to work? Like, do we have enough savings? Are our investments safe? Like, do we feel like, where we're at, is a good place? I mean, technically too, that was when we were closing on that Watkins Glen house. Mm-hmm. So like we had a lot of, the carry costs. I had 8 months carry cost for that house because
for Watkins Glen purchase.
For Watkins Glen, yes.
So and what about personally, Kenny? How much did carry cost did you have for your personal budget at that time? Like your household budget?
Enough for like 2 to 3 years. Like literally,
so that's a big number.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if your budget's $5,000 a month or $50,000 a month. That's a long runway, right?
Yeah.
And the thing that I want people to really understand, it was a terminology that I used during COVID before I even started in this industry as a coach, and it was coaching in the ground transportation hospitality space. And the most important thing before PPP came out, before anybody could get their hands on EIDL funds, was extending your runway as far as you could. You had the cost cut immediately. You had the people getting laid off, fired, all those types of things, because you had to extend that runway because people didn't plan well enough. Then most people didn't have 12 months in reserves. And the perfect example in our industry, Kenny, is Stay Alfred. If anybody remembers them, they had like 9 buildings in Miami and Austin and 2 here in Nashville. And they were arbitraging essentially, high-end condo high rises, and they were out of business in less than 40 days. By like May 1st, they were gone. Poof. Stay Alfred was gone. Bree and I even did a staycation at one in Nashville, and it was nice, but they didn't have enough reserves. And that's why I get really fired up about this topic, is because those reserves, would you have quit your job with 3 months reserves? Personal?
No.
Would you have quit your job at 6 months? 9 months, 12 months. What's that threshold?
Well, I think 12 months. Yeah, I would have done it at 12 for sure.
Most people that are buying STRs right now don't even have 6 months of reserves personally, and they're investing their entire future into short-term rentals. And I'm going to tell you guys from probably two of the best pickers of properties in our industry. Somebody could argue that, but I'm going to tell you, it's really hard right now. It's really hard. I don't want to say it's impossible, but I mean, I've got, as we're recording this, I have 6 days left on my 1031 for identification. And I have no clue what I'm writing down on that piece of paper right now. And I don't even know how many 1031s, a ton. And I've never been this far down the wire, to figure out what I'm going to do. And I've hit 6 markets, as you know, Kenny, in probably the last 4 or 5 weeks. And I've got one more to look at next week. And I've got to make the decision by next Thursday at midnight. It's a stressful position to be in, because I don't want to settle and acquire an asset that's going to be a drain on my time and not profitable. That's why I sold the last property, because I wanted to turn that into something, to make more money based on my time and money valuation. And now it's become very challenging. And I think one of the things, this is probably something we should talk about in a future podcast, is just, I can find stuff, but I don't want to overextend my 1031. I don't want to sell a property for 600 and go buy a $2 million property. You know what I mean? I want to stay in that, $600,000 to $900,000 range, so I can do that again. Because if I go too high, then I'm at risk again. I'm creating more risk for myself if I have to ever access that cash, or if I want a 1031 again. And I know you can split. I've done that in the past, but you end up putting yourself in a box. And I think that's what people are doing when they HELOC. They're mortgaging the second and third property, or the next one or two, because essentially if they take out $100,000, it's going to potentially be, an interest. It's going to be a payment on what that $100,000 could be used to buy a $500,000 property on that HELOC, right? So you're almost eliminating 50% of your profitability by using that as your down payment at an 8.5% interest rate.
Would you HELOC an investment property though?
Would I personally?
Yes.
No.
Really? Okay.
I probably won't even end up taking a HELOC out on my pool, to be honest with you, because I don't want to attach something to. So all this has to do with the life plan, Kenny.
I would. An investment property, I would definitely consider it.
And how old are you?
Not that old.
Like, you're like early 30. What are you, 32, 33?
I turned 31 2 weeks ago. So.
Yeah. So, okay. So happy birthday. You're 30. I'm 50. You remember the very first meeting in very first mastermind meeting in Gatlinburg? What did we spend the entire fucking day doing? Building out your life plan. You remember those first 6 pages of your workbook? Remember the first whole module in the accelerator? I've got a plan. For me, it's to eliminate my debt. John, the bank whisperer Hodge, he's leverage, leverage, leverage. Ryan, leverage, leverage, leverage. They're different. You can do it. You're at 30. I'm 50. This is why you have to have a plan, right? And I never want to inflict my plan on somebody else, ever. But you need to have that outcome identified so you can architect your way to get there. If I'm 30, I'm at 80% LTV on every investment property. Right? Literally, I would have everything maxed out. But today, I'm trying to go Dave Ramsey style, man. I want to get my debt, paid down. And that's the one reason why I sold Beach Mountain. I'm looking for this other property, because I want to get into that 7 figures, on income on my rental portfolio to pay down that last $4 million before I retire. If I can, so there's a whole systematic plan, for that. And then what happens when I get to retirement? Then I can sell some of those properties that don't have cost eggs, 1031s, DSCRs, encumbrance to it. And I can start to make my portfolio even smaller. That's the ultimate goal that nobody talks about. How do I make my portfolio smaller as I get older without having to compromise cash flow or investments?
Right.
Everybody talks about more units, and people are leveraging HELOCs to get more units. And as you said earlier, they're not running the pro formas accurately. They're not looking at their reserves for your personal household budgets and also to cover the property. That's the double whammy. Don't compromise your household budget, your personal, your family, your kids, their future, their college, their 529s, your self-directed IRAs, your 401ks. Don't sacrifice that to make an investment today unless you are 1000% certain. I've seen 2 properties, Kenny, 2 that are what I would call 100% locks in the last 6 weeks. They're both in the same fucking market. You sent me one of them a couple of days ago.
Oh, really? Okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
Sure. Wait, what? Or the market or what? The
The market, yeah.
Yeah.
And the properties. And there's no question that one you sent me, I can turn that into a super property, no question.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I don't know. I don't know that Bria is going to let me pull the trigger on it, but that's still in discussions if it's still available. Those how many 100% locks have you seen in the last 60 days? Handful?
Yeah, definitely a handful. They pop
When
up.
we were doing Bill and Kenny's hot picks a year ago, how many were we seeing in the 60-day period from June through July?
I would say a
10
handful.
a week?
Yeah, I would say 10 a week. I'd say a handful a week. Whereas now it's like a handful, 60 days, a month kind of thing.
So 5 and 60 days in 2023, we're talking 40. Yeah, 40 in the same 60-day period in 2022. That's 8x.
Yeah.
8
Easily.
times less on the locks right now. You better be super duper diligent on your underwriting process.
Yep.
You better make sure you understand the true cost and the payback period if you take out a HELOC. And it's kind of the same thing, Kenny, for a cash out refi, if anybody's doing that as well. Because especially if you're taking an interest rate that's going to go from, say, 4 to 8.5, right? What would happen if you would have stayed as is? I think there's other alternatives in this space for people to build up their nest egg that won't encumber, the risk of doing a HELOC or a cash out refi today. I mean, you could co-host, you could manage, you can do a lot of other things, do some pricing optimization, side hustle, build websites, whatever. Figure out how you can do it. But if you don't have the money today, you just better be really, really conservative.
I agree. I absolutely agree. I mean, the way I look at it too, even with HELOC, so if I'm going to HELOC my house, my investment, not my personal, but an investment property, I want that investment property to be able to cash flow enough to pay for its own self and then the HELOC as well, in case the other property doesn't.
And you need to have a defined payback period of your HELOC. I mean, just like when you go in and you do a 15-year AM, a 20-year AM, a 30-year AM, some people are trying to do 40-year AMs just to make it affordable. You got to have that defined payback period.
All right.
So if I'm doing a HELOC, if I did do a HELOC, I've done a HELOC one time. It's when I bought some LTRs here in Nashville after I moved here. When I moved into this house about 2 years after. I built this in 2005. I HELOC'd in 2007. And I took out $150,000 to make down payments to buy 2 condos. It turned out to be a great investment. But you know what I didn't do at that time? I didn't pay it back. I was paying interest until the balloon came up. 10 years. 2017. Because I didn't know any better. Right. So how much money did I lose in that? And interest rates were still low. They weren't 2s like we saw during COVID. But then I had to make a balloon payment on that because I didn't schedule a payback period. And it's one of the things with Bree and I are in a different position than we were when we first started. There's no question. We made a lot of money in real estate, a lot of money in short-term rentals, and we accelerate our payback periods. Right. So most of we have one DSCR product. My Banner Elk House is a DSCR. So we still have a documented payback period on that. And we pay principal into an account, very similar to like what, McCallowich said with setting up your multiple accounts for profit first. All the others are on 10 and 15-year amortizations to pay them down. She's making payments twice a month. We're adding on additional principal to those twice a month. So we pay down interest faster, making interest payments. And I think the other real problem, this is probably a whole nother podcast, Kenny, about how people do financing can really affect their future outcome. There's a lot of people that have a DSCR, have taken advantage of a cost segregation, and they've done the 40-year AM or even a 30-year AM interest only, and they've gained no equity in a property, and that market may have taken a 20% hit. They can't exit today.
No.
Think about the people that have done 5% or 10% down second homes, and they need to access cash. They need to, liquidate debt because they're losing money. You and I know a couple people in the accelerator and our programs that have had those issues. Their investments aren't performing the way that they thought when they bought in 21 or 22. And because they entered poorly, they have no exit strategy. That, my friends, that stuff, it hits me hard. I think we need to do better. Kenny and I need to do better. All of us as coaches and influencers in this industry, we have to bring these things to light so you guys that are watching this don't end up in that position. That's why I get really fired up about the HELOC stuff, because almost everybody I see gets, especially when things shift as fast as they did, Kenny, this is where people get caught holding the bag.
Yep.
And it sucks. Is that it?
That is it. Yeah. We'll leave on a dark note there.
Guys, we love you. If you really pay attention on how to underwrite, how to choose a market, how to choose a sub-market, how to choose the property and evaluate at the property level, not just the market level. Really understand the options for financing and how your long-term goals and where your current financial situation, how that plays a role into your investment strategy and into your reinvestment strategy with a HELOC or with a cash out refi, or to sell into 1031 when you should or shouldn't use cost segregations. All of these things become extremely important. There's really only one place that you can get all of that education in one stop. And I'm just going to seed this for you guys because I've got Kenny here, who's a member of my super team. We will be launching our accelerator program. That's the only place you can get all of this from the experts, from the tax guy, from the attorney, from the banker, from Kenny, the data analyst, from Avery, from myself, from Chris, marketing, all of it. If you're struggling with any of that stuff, I would strongly advise you to consider going through the fall program with the accelerator. This is the first, we're announcing it right now, Kenny. We are doing the accelerator again.
We're doing it again.
We are.
It's news to me. I'm just kidding. I kind of knew.
We are doing the accelerator again, and that's the place where, that is the only place that you can get that. So,
hey guys, sorry to cut you off here, Bill. I was just going to say this popped in my mind. Do you know anybody who's looking for a property and they're new or they're like thinking about doing some of these things? Please have them listen to this episode. Like, I think a lot of people need to hear it and understand it. And I'm having these conversations with people every single week. So I know there's people out there, and maybe there's people out there. So like, share this if you don't mind, and let's help some people out.
Friends don't let friends make bad financing decisions. And part of that just starts with the mindset of opening up to feel free to talk about money.
Yeah.
That's hard for a lot of people, and I get it. I'm probably one of the most open people about my personal finances and money, and it's hard to talk about personal things. Kenny, I didn't know what you shared earlier. And I mean, I don't even know how hard that was. I'm about ready to get teared up just even thinking about it, to be honest with you. We just dropped our dog off for 2 weeks for training, and my daughter and I are crying, as we're not going to see our dog Shaggy for 2 weeks as I put it in military training. But I'm dead serious. Friends don't let friends make bad investments. If you don't have somebody to talk to about money, if you don't have somebody to talk to about investing, then just shoot me a private message on Instagram, or Kenny a message on Instagram, Facebook, whatever, because That's the reason that Kenny and I do what we're doing with this podcast. What I'm doing with the super team is to bring you the best of the best education to where you don't become one of those casualties that makes a mistake like this. We really appreciate you joining us. Thank you for joining us on STRonomics. We'll see you guys next week.
See ya.